Gophers lose Floyd of Rosedale back to Iowa after a second half collapse. Final score 31-14. We're breaking it all down. It's coming up next on the Locked On Gophers POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on? Back in the lab, back at it. Another Gophers POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. That's your team every day. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. We got the Gophers Hall of Famer, Ron Johnson, host of the Ron Johnson Show each and every Tuesday. Follow him on X, by the way, if you haven't already. He's at 3 Ron Johnson. We got some bonus Sam Ekstrom time, which we always love. He's at Sam Ekstrom, fresh off his play-by-play at the Wayzata Edina Friday Night Lights matchup last night. Gotta love that. Sam, it's still fresh. It's still raw. It just ended. Give me your 30-second knee-jerk reaction to what we just watched play out for the Floyd of Rosedale as it pertains to the Golden Gophers.
Last year when they met, Iowa could not run the ball. Tonight, they could run the ball. Last year, when they met, the Gophers turned over Iowa. Tonight, they did not turn over Iowa. And those two factors played into a dominant Iowa second half. And back to the drawing board for the Gophers. And it could get ugly quickly for Minnesota early in this conference season.
Yeah, hold on to that thought. I want to keep diving into that and plenty more. But first, quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Go visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Ron, same question. I mean, Gophers kept it close. Heck, they had a 7-point lead at halftime, but then Iowa's running game, man, Caleb Johnson just took over. Defense wore down. Just give us your biggest takeaways, kind of your A topics to start out this one.
Yeah, hopefully this win doesn't get in the way. But, Caleb Johnson early on wasn't going his way, and then it just went. And so if you look at the passing versus the running game, and I said this on the pregame show, they have to make Cade McNamara one-dimensional, which means take away the pass, take away the run, make him pass. And they didn't do it today. I mean, if you look at the stats, it's unbalanced. The Gophers passed the ball more. They didn't run the ball with him. They had to run the ball with Darius Taylor, and it didn't happen. And that's why they're in the position they were in, which is they had a lead, 14-7, and they couldn't hold on to it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you almost always know what you're going to get with this Gophers-Iowa matchup. More years than not. Usually, as we all know, it's a lot of low-scoring affairs. Usually comes down to the wire, the last drive, sometimes the last play. It's a lot of who wins the trenches, like we saw a lot last year, the special teams phase. That ends up having a lot to do with the final outcome. That was kind of all the previews, all the talk coming into this one. It really just wasn't the case, at least in the second half. And Ron, to your point, my biggest gripe in this one, just to echo your thoughts, 12 touches for Darius Taylor. And I like Major. I like the balance he can give. I thought the running back timeshare was just too much, though. 12 touches for Darius Taylor. I don't know if you guys saw the graphic up there on the broadcast. This team was 6-3 when Darius Taylor plays, 3-6 when he doesn't play, and they average 50 yards on the ground more every game when Darius Taylor plays. But he just didn't get the ball enough. Sam, did you see kind of the same trend? Maybe in the first half, it's like, okay, boy, there a lot of 50-50 going on with Darius Taylor and Major. They try to get both of them out on the field. They would spread one out, try to maybe a little bit of a decoy in the passing game at times. But end of the day, I think this is what I'm going to be sitting here thinking about tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's interesting. I look at the drive chart, Luke, and the Gophers had 2 phenomenal drives for touchdowns late in the first half, combined 15 plays, 132 yards. I think they had about 132 yards the rest of the game. I mean, their other drives were so short. There was no chance to create any kind of run-pass balance or any kind of like rhythm with Taylor or Majors. I mean, Major. I don't really know if I can get too worked up when in the second half, again, they had to throw the ball a lot and they didn't do that successfully. But they did not have any success offensively whatsoever, except for these 2 standalone drives. I don't know how many drives they picked up more than 1 first down on in the game, numerous 3-and-outs, and just really no opportunity. Iowa did a good job of stopping Taylor or Major in early downs, setting up passing situations. So I think if we look at this play by play, there just weren't a lot of good, opportune rushing moments. in this game. They kind of kept the Gophers at bay, but Iowa dominated the trenches too. I mean, let's be honest about that. 272 rushing yards for Iowa. Gophers were held to 79. So when they did try, it did not go well. Whether it was Taylor, whether it was Major, I think Taylor averaged 3.5 yards a carry in this game. And that's been a little bit of a problem for the Gophers, even in the non-conference. Rushing efficiency just has not been there with the veteran offensive line, which you would really hope improves as the year goes on.
Yeah, they had the lead or a tie ball game until 6 minutes left in the third quarter. So, I mean, you're right, Sam. Like, they had opportunities to run the ball. They just didn't do it effectively and efficiently when those opportunities kind of presented themselves. And then you're right. Once they got behind, it was just kind of very one-dimensional. Ron, speaking of like the passing game, you and I came on here after week one, and there was a lot of frustration from you, not so much about Max Brosmer himself, but I remember you talking about the coaches and the game plan they kind of put together, not putting him in very good situations, not getting him, into a rhythm with some easier passes, some easier concepts. We got 4 game sample size to work with now. What is kind of your assessment of Max Brosmer, of the passing game, as far as, maybe the realistic floor and ceiling? Because I finally saw him get to a really healthy rhythm at the end of the first half. He was moving the ball up and down the field. I think I will say even better than we've seen this passing game do in a while, whether that was under Tanner Morgan or Ethan Kelly-McManus.
Yeah, when you think about what happened, so here's the biggest change that they didn't do. So when you think about shifts in motions, you think about getting guys in positions to understand the mismatches. They didn't do it. Greg Harbaugh for a while has been saying he was actually talking. I was talking to Tanner Morgan. He was at the game tonight as too, and we were both saying that you have to do that, even if it's token. You have to do that, and that allows the quarterback to be able to understand what the coverage is. Sorry for the win, but if you understand the changes, maybe I'll turn my back. But if you understand the changes within the offense, you didn't see them tonight. I think early on we saw them, and now we're not seeing them. And so what you're getting is very vanilla looks. You're not really understanding the coverage. But I think Max Brosmer, like, again, the fourth quarter of that North Carolina game, when he got to go no huddle, 2-minute offense, they need to do that more. And I think that's going to make him successful. He is a quick trigger. He's a guy that wants to let go of the ball fast. He's not a guy that can sit in the pocket, 7-step drop guy. That's not him.
Yeah, Sam, and this is Brosmer's, first real Big Ten experience, first real Big Ten game. You're not going to get a more intense rivalry game and matchup on your resume than this one. I assume there would be some nerves coming into this one, some human element factors, if you will. He might have to overcome the size of the moment, at least those first couple throws. But again, 4 game sample size. Can you sit here and confidently say that Max Brosmer in this passing game is an upgrade from what we've gotten really under any point under the PJ Fleck era these past 6-7 years?
Yeah, I don't think I'm sold either way, positive or negative on that. I wrote this in my notes. Rhode Island and Nevada, just not the tune-ups you want before Iowa. That's not what you want to get accustomed to going into one of your biggest rivalry games. It would have been nice to have a Rutgers or an Indiana, a Northwestern, somebody to ease into a little bit, because I don't think that facing Iowa coming off of what he faced the last 2 weeks is really comparable whatsoever. So I think that's probably tough for Brosmer. And they mentioned this on the broadcast multiple times. Toughest defense he's ever faced. I felt like the coverage was sticky all game. Credit to Iowa. And even on the 2 successful drives, Luke, look at some of those dimes that Brosmer threw. Yeah. Really tight windows, really tight coverage. Frankly, fortunate the receivers were able to make those catches, really good plays. The Gears touchdown, the Brockington catch on the sideline. Credit the receivers, and they were great throws too, but that's not sustainable over a whole game. Your receivers also need to get some separation, so let's also add that in. But I did think Brosmer was a tad deer in the headlights at times, dropping back. If his first read was gone, he got kind of skittish feet, started leaving the pocket fairly early, maybe just not totally secure. And again, facing a good pass rush too in Iowa. So I think this was a learning experience for him. The problem is in a college football season, you don't have a lot of time to figure it out. You gotta have it figured out fast so you can bank wins and try to get bowl eligible. And it's not going to get easier with USC and Michigan next.
Yeah, good breakdown there. Well said. And I will say, first drive, opening drive, they try to get him into a rhythm in the passing game. Lemeki Brockington drops just a wide open pass. You're thinking, oh no, here we go. Things got better before they got worse again. But to your point, yeah, sometimes it's not all on the quarterback. Some guys got to go up and just go make a play once in a while. Plenty more deep dive from this one, including the defensive performance or lack thereof. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, the formula for winning championships. Also, what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors, they got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to the ultimate peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. They got it all. And whether you're into speed, power, or style, they got you covered. 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back with all the parts you need at the prices you want. Easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, just speaking of helping your quarterback, got to give a shout out to Daniel Jackson here real quick. What do you have? At 9 catches for 112 yards. Probably could have been an even bigger day statistically. Ron, Daniel Jackson, man, let's see here. We got 8 games left. If he averages about 100, so what he did tonight, he may end up 4th all-time on the Gophers' all-time receiving record, just behind this guy named Ron Johnson sitting there at 3rd place. How about Daniel Jackson tonight?
Oh, Ron just went wheel of death on us. He was at the game. I don't know if you can tell. Ron was at the game.
Yeah.
I actually want to ask Ron about the atmosphere tonight, how many Iowa fans were there and all that, but he's got some signal issues. I'll speak on Daniel Jackson. I mean, he was on Ron's show. Ron's had Daniel on the show. We love Daniel Jackson. He's a baller. I mean, he had some great catches tonight over the middle, tough catches, contested catches on the boundary. Clearly, they're number one. There was a stretch here in the late first half where I said to myself, dang, like the Gophers have playmakers finally. It's been a while. It's been a while since Bateman and Tyler Johnson.
Yes.
Bring back the playmakers. And the second half did not yield any of that feeling whatsoever. But credit Daniel Jackson. And it was tantalizing, Luke, to have those 2 drives late in the first half, which were not stemming from anything fluky. They weren't really penalty aided. They weren't because of a short field. There wasn't like a muff punt or anything. They legitimately passed the ball downfield twice in a row on Iowa. Daniel Jackson, big part of it. But then Brockington getting involved, Elijah Spencer with a touchdown, Jamison Gears with a touchdown, Darius Taylor making plays, everybody getting involved exactly how you want it to look. And then it just stopped. But I got to give credit where it's due. Daniel Jackson, great game. We'll see if that can continue on. He's going to have to be a big lift to this passing game.
By the way, Daniel Jackson hits 2,000 career receiving yards for the Gophers. Again, about 700 yards. If he can average just about 90 yards per game from here on out, 8 games left, he should end up 4th all time, which is pretty cool. Yeah, something about Gophers producing just some legitimate number 1 wide receivers, especially for a Big Ten kind of cold weather run first team. You talked about it. Eric Deckers, obviously our guy Ron Johnson, Tyler Johnson. You mentioned Bateman. I forgot about him. And now Daniel Jackson next in line. Yeah, to your point, Sam, I would love to just chalk this up to, they lost the turnover battle. 2-0. You told me that going into the game. I said, well, of course they're going to lose that game. You lose a turnover battle even by 1, that might be enough. That's too simple. It almost might be too lazy, though. You're right. First half, it kind of felt like a stalemate in the trenches. Could have went either way. Second half, Iowa just turned something on. They flipped a switch, and they just dominated. Do you think, and not to mention, obviously, Caleb Johnson, this guy is not a one-game wonder. This guy's been doing it all season long. He turned into an absolute freight train, and it only takes a couple big plays to kind of swing a game like this in the wrong direction. Do you think this was more of an indictment on the Gophers' defense or that running back just being that special when we look back at the end of the year?
Yeah, well, how wild is this? Again, Last year, box score,
Yeah.
Caleb Johnson, 6 carries, 18 yards. The team had 11 because their quarterback got sacked a million times. Their offensive line is really good. And again, this is the difference between the Gophers in the non-conference and Iowa in the non-conference. Gophers have been like 3.8 yards per carry in the non-conference rushing. Iowa was 5.9, and they were right there tonight. They were 6 yards a carry tonight for the night. So they continued what they showed in the non-conference. And the Gophers kind of continued what they had showed in the non-conference, which was not running the ball super effectively. Caleb Johnson is a tank. Got to tackle the guy at the line of scrimmage. That first touchdown, he had no business getting to the edge. On the third touchdown, no business getting through the line of scrimmage. And then and great point on the broadcast. Todd Blackledge had this point on the view behind the line of scrimmage. The two backup defensive backs took bad angles and didn't bring him down. But again, talking about the trenches specifically, Gophers were healthy there. Their front seven was pretty healthy. There was no reason why they had to let him get through to the second level that many times. So some poor Gopher tackling, great running by Johnson. I think they're right on NBC tonight. He's going to be playing in the NFL.
Yeah, well said. This defense came into tonight with the number one passing defense in the country when it comes to passer rating allowed. They're coming off 2 games where they shut both offenses out, allowed 0 points. Ron, I came into this week thinking, is this like the best Gophers defense we've seen under PJ Fleck? Obviously, I don't have the same vibe and same feeling sitting here 10 minutes after tonight's game. But how adjustable, like how correctable were the mistakes they made tonight? Because it really didn't feel like anything special. Just run the ball right down their throat, and it worked.
Yeah, so you're talking about the Gophers.
Gophers defense,
yeah.
Coming in, stock was high, not so much anymore.
So here's the thing. That offensive line for Iowa, like you can't deny they're good. They're not good. Like they're a good offensive line. We knew that coming in. Caleb Johnson was the number 1 running back in the Big Ten. We knew that for a reason. He was one of the top after contact running backs. He's one of the top guys that, completely as far as NFL draft status goes. So when you mix all that together and you don't have gap integrity, you don't have guys trusting, coming downhill, it just didn't look like the same Gophers team. Even North Carolina's running back, we know Marion Hampton is really good, and he didn't look as good as Caleb Johnson did today. And I don't know if it comes down to just who wants it more. I don't know if it comes down to these are some NFL talented linemen. We knew he couldn't throw. We knew Cade McNamara couldn't throw. If you watch the Iowa State game, he was terrible, and they almost benched him for another guy. Like, we didn't even know if Cade McNamara would play today versus the Gophers. And it worked. They said, you know what? Let's just keep running the ball until we can't run it no more. And the Gophers never stopped the run. So they played right into Iowa's hands. They added Tim Lester. Tim Lester joined Iowa. He came from the Bears. And so you think about the old Bears with Cedric Benson and Adrian Peterson, those running backs back then, the first Adrian Peterson, not the second. Tim Lester joined the staff, and he's trying to make Iowa good. He also, he had a stint in Ohio State as well. Tim Lester's just a guy that knows how to run the ball, and it shows.
Ron, one more about this defense, because I mentioned to Sam, I would love to just chalk this up as, they lost the turnover battle. So, it's just that simple. You lose the turnover battle, you're probably going to lose the game, no matter what level of football you're playing at. And they did lose the battle 2-0. But I mentioned to Sam, even without that, it still didn't feel like they made enough plays defensively to win. Having said that, You'd love to see them create some more turnovers defensively, wouldn't you? I should have the stats pulled up. I don't have them here through these first 3 games. But last year, I just think back to Tyler Nubin, the ball hawking safety, making plays in center field every single week. This year, it kind of feels like they're missing that one big turnover in these kind of tight games, does it not?
Oh, I mean, the sample size is not enough yet. But going into this game, they had 7 interceptions. They were number 1 in the Big Ten. I think they were number 2 in the nation. So they were doing it early. They just didn't do it today. And again, you can't do it when the team doesn't throw the ball. That's the key.
Time. Next year, baby.
Next year, we'll get it.
He's got some fans.
But, when you think about it, that's the key. Like, if they don't throw the ball, there's no way you're going to get an interception. And so if you don't force them to throw the ball, now you're banking on punching the ball out. The one kid kind of fumbled, but he was down. You're just hoping for stuff like that. If you're not forcing the quarterback, I said this in the pregame show, you have to win first and second down, and the Gophers didn't do it. Like, they did not win first and second down. They were never in a 3rd and long situation where they had to throw the ball, and that's where they lost the game.
I've got a stat. I've got a good stat.
Please,
Second half for Iowa, 36 plays, 30 runs, 6 passes.
Wow.
Just didn't force McNamara to do anything.
And they never didn't have to be one-dimensional too. To Ron's point, to that stats point as well, like they just never were put in a position until, about 6 minutes into the third quarter where it's just like, I think we figured it out. I think until you prove that you can stop this, we're just going to continue to run it down your throat. Do we think Blake Cashman and TJ Hawkinson had a little side bet going on this week, by the way, Gophers versus Iowa? Is Cashman going to show up to the podium next week in some Iowa gear? Ron, you played in the NFL. How much does that kind of stuff happen in NFL locker rooms when you played?
Oh, it happens a ton. Like Miami guys, so Ray Lewis, we had the Florida State Miami guys. So Pete Boulware, Ray Lewis, Corey Fuller was a Florida State guy. So, yeah, those guys always had stuff going. Big Ten-wise, I had a Wisconsin guy in there. I think I also had an Ohio State guy in there, which I never would bet against Ohio State or bet. I wouldn't even care. Like, it didn't matter. Yeah. But Michigan, I had a Michigan guy the year the Gophers. I thought they were going to win. They were up. We went to meetings. I came out, and they lost. They were in Michigan, either in Michigan or in the Metrodome. I can't remember when they blew it, but they blew it. But yeah, no, it goes on a lot. Like guys are constantly like trying to come up with something. So yeah, Blake might have to show up tomorrow in like an Iowa hoodie or something. Who knows?
Yeah, Ron, what was the vibe? What was the vibe at the stadium tonight? Was it yeah.
Early on, it was great. Early on, it was super great. Everybody was excited to be here. Fans were enjoying it. I mean, like you saw the guy, like there was a ton of people coming up to me. Hey, Ron, love what you do on TV. Love the pod. Iowa and Gophers, like it was all love. It was there was no, it wasn't any animosity. Even though you heard the I hate Iowa, who hates Iowa, we hate Iowa. It was fun. Like everybody was hanging out. 7-7, everybody's still in it. 14-7, everybody's still in it. 21-14, people kind of got a little like 28-14, 31-14. It started slowly getting like a funeral. And everybody dressed in black was happy. Like everybody in maroon was like pissed off, like arguing with each other now. Like, I trust PJ. I don't trust PJ. I wish the Gophers would run the ball more with Darius Taylor. So the vibe changed very quick. Like it was dead. Even on the sideline, like I went on the sideline for a little bit in the second half and talked to Chris Altman-Bell for a minute. He was like, man, they got to find some juice. Because there was no juice on the sideline even. Like you could just tell, like it felt flat. Like they needed a big play. And normally it was like a Tyler Newman interception, or even like this past game, you had 3 picks. Like that's juice. There was none. There was no juice. So I don't know at what point it kind of went away, but the vibes early were great. Like my daughter got to come. Me and my wife, my daughter came. We didn't have to bring in the 9-year-old. We just brought the 13-year-old, and so it was cool for her to see the student section, for her to kind of be a teenager and see what college is like. It was great. It was a great atmosphere. And then by the third quarter, you could tell like, okay, here it goes.
Yeah, Sam, I know you watched the broadcast as well. That first half, to Ron's point, just to echo the same thing, every time they showed the crowd in that first half, that place looked like it was rocking, ton of energy. But to Ron's point, yeah, a very slow burn, kind of a slow bleed out death for sure in that second half. Don't go anywhere. Got to talk about this upcoming schedule. Got Michigan next, then USC on deck. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we've got something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers bet $5. You get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need, a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Go check it out over at FanDuel.com. Get in on the action. Some Vikes-Texans action tomorrow. Current spread, Houston by 1.5. Over-under, currently at 46.5. And it's all up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Okay, Ron, a quick sneak peek to next week on the road in Ann Arbor. They squeaked by USC today on a last-minute drive, by the way. Pretty great game right before this Gophers Iowa. But, I will say this is clearly not the same Michigan team we've gotten used to in years past. No J.J. McCarthy, no Blake Corum, obviously no Jim Harbaugh. What's going to be the secret sauce to go into Michigan's house and make this thing a ball game, keep it close when you just think about this matchup at first glance?
So if you watch the game and you watch the past couple of games, you can't let Michigan get you behind the sticks. Like that's when their safeties or corners. They love to play, similar to the Harbaugh, teams. And then they have Will Johnson, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the country. So honestly, like Darius Taylor has to rush for over 100 yards. Like he has to. Like he has to have more than 12 touches. I do understand, punting the ball, like lack of offensive production, lack of moving the chains. But you have to find a way to get Darius Taylor involved more, whether it's even put him at receiver and throw the ball to him a little bit. He's got to have more touches. And so in order to beat Michigan, you have to play a clean game. USC played a clean game all the way up to the end. And that's what it was, 20 to 24, and they had it, and then they just let Michigan kind of get away with it. So you have to play all four quarters. This is a team that won the national championship last year. And so they know how to win games. So even if it's close, you got to play the entire game because they feel like they can win any game right now.
Yeah, good breakdown there. Sam, Gophers have just kind of had a hard time winning these, kind of quote unquote premium games under the PJ Fleck era.
And Luke,
yeah,
one thing though, you said no Blake Corum. Donovan Edwards is legit.
Oh, he's a stud.
Donovan Edwards is legit. So I will say, they not got rid of, but Blake Corum moved on, and they had another horse in the stable ready to go. So, I mean, again, there's a team that their quarterback, I don't know how much they trust their quarterback, but they know they can run the ball.
Well, check this out, Ron. Donovan Edwards, 14 carries, 74 yards. And I thought he was going to come out into the draft this year. He didn't. He stayed. He's a stud. But Khalil Mullings, number 20 today, 17 carries, 159 yards. So apparently they got two studs. They just keep churning them out. So keep an eye on that. Sam, I was just going to say, like, under the Fleck era, I wish I had it pulled up. I don't know how many of these premium wins he's got on the resume. It's usually a grind to keep these kind of games close for 60 minutes, just for the most part. What do you think they got to build on from tonight's game to kind of go toe-to-toe with one of the big, one of the best in the Big Ten, I should say?
I don't know.
You don't have
this could be a quick 0-3 start in the Big Ten. I mean, you've got the next two opponents playing today with USC and Michigan. Now, Michigan is, much like Iowa, a bit passing inept, or at least if they know they can run the ball on you, that's all they'll do. We saw them do it with Jim Harbaugh, and that's carried on now to Sherrone Moore. 290 yards rushing, 32 yards passing. That was the deal today, and it worked. Now, USC, they're going to throw the ball. Miller Moss is legit. They can throw the ball. They can light you up, and this Gophers defense is going to be challenged. I wonder, too, if there's a little warning sign when we saw that UNC, a team that beat the Gophers in the non-conference, gave up 70 to James Madison earlier in the day. There's just some red flags about the Gophers right now. If they can go in and beat Michigan, I believe it would be PJ's first Little Brown Jug. Ron, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if he's beaten Michigan yet. Maybe
no,
I'm
he hasn't.
I don't think he has. I think he's got the axe a couple times. Got Floyd of Rosedale, obviously. But it's been a grind. He got the victory bell from Penn State in that big game. But you're right, Luke. The overall record in trophy games, got to think it's probably about 40%.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to what Ron said. The splits with and without Darius Taylor. I understand you like what Major brings to the table, but DT, man, we've seen it. He's on another level just as far as talent goes. He's a game changer. Here's the stat: 6-2 with him coming in, 3-6 without him. Again, 50 more rush yards per game. Proof's kind of in the pudding. I got to see 20, 25 touches minimum next week. No matter the score or the game flow, really, I got to see him get the ball and touch the ball more. He's just too special not to build your game plan around. It's just kind of that simple. So you guys kind of touched on it. Michigan in Ann Arbor next, then USC at home, then at UCLA before your bye. On paper, guys, this feels like just an absolute gauntlet coming up. I know it's one game at a time mentality. You don't want to look too far ahead. You didn't beat North Carolina, though, which was kind of a coin flip going in. You lost tonight. What's like the new ceiling now, I guess, for PJ and this team, knowing, how tough this schedule is coming up here, Ron? Like, what's the goal now if you're PJ Fleck and you're trying to avoid a second losing season in a row?
Yeah, so you got 2 wins right now. USC, Michigan don't look good. UCLA, I think you can probably get one from.
Got Wisconsin,
Wisconsin
Maryland.
Looks beatable. Maryland, I don't know. Honestly, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough stretch. I think they have Rutgers on there as well.
Yep. Illinois, Penn State.
You and Illinois look really good. They beat they beat Nebraska. Penn State looks good. So I just don't. Honestly, like that 5.5 is now starting to look sketchy. Like, I don't know if they can get over 5.5 wins. Like, I'm really struggling because I thought UNC was a win and I thought this Iowa game was a win. And so now you take those off the table. It's going to get tough. But again, we know that if all of a sudden Darius Taylor comes to life, rushes for 180 yards, they can get it done. They just have to do that. That's going to be the next step is, can Darius Taylor do that?
Last quick one, then we'll get out of here. What has stuck out to you guys the most as far as this new Big Ten football action goes, now that we got a little bit bigger sample size through these 4 games? It's still relatively new so far. A lot of new names, a lot of new faces going on. Still feels kind of weird to me, if I'm being totally honest. But, give me a team or a player, good, bad, you name it. Just what has caught your eye or surprised you, I guess, thus far through college football and the Big Ten specifically through these first 4 weeks?
Just the novelty for me. Like, it's pretty cool to have Michigan playing USC on September 21st. It feels like if that was scheduled in a previous year, that would be the pinnacle non-conference game of the entire season. And now we're going to get that on the regular because it's so new. It feels special. You've got these 2 conferences basically converging. And it's kind of really a battle for supremacy because the new Big Ten teams are like, we want to prove ourselves, and the old Big Ten teams want to say, no, like, you guys aren't coming in and you're not going to be better than us. And that was on display today with Michigan USC. I loved it. I love that element of it, and we're going to get that all year.
Mm-hmm. Ron, any Big Ten reactions thus far before we get out of here?
Yeah, so for me, I agree with Sam. Like, seeing every time I look at the stats and I see Oregon's quarterback at the top, I'm like, what? Why is Oregon on the Big Ten stat list? What? And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oregon's in the freaking Big Ten. So, yeah, it is cool to see some of these rivalries. It's also going to be cool, though, how the West Coast kept some of theirs. Like Washington State still plays, Oregon State. So you do still get the UCLA and USC, even though they're in the Big Ten, but it's cool that they still play. Like, it's cool to see all that. The other thing that's kind of throwing me back a little bit about this is I want to see some of these big clashes, like seeing the Big Ten against USC, seeing the Big Ten against UCLA, seeing the Big Ten against Oregon as we move forward. Like, I think Ohio State, Oregon comes up. Seeing who's best, like seeing is the Big Ten run games or, like what's going to happen, because we still don't know what the Gophers can be versus the West Coast team. And so we'll finally get the taste of that. Like, we'll get to see, because who knows, maybe the Gophers run game, there's some USC can't stop about it. Like, maybe all of a sudden Darius Taylor goes nuts. We'll see. Or maybe they blow the doors off and we're like, okay, here's what it is.
We're going to get our first taste here real quick in these next 3 weeks. Again, USC
Michigan,
at home,
USC,
at UCLA coming up, then their bye week. We better get out of here. Gophers lose Floyd back to Iowa after that second half collapse. Final score 31-14. They dropped to 2-2 on the year. Again, Michigan up next in Ann Arbor. I'm sure J.J. McCarthy will be tuned into that one. That's for sure. Hey, huge shout out to all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game right here, breaking it all down. Got to go check out all of Ron's work on X at 3Ron Johnson. Plus, check him out on the Ron Johnson Show each and every Tuesday. Sam Ekstrom at Sam Ekstrom, host of the Minnesota Football Party every Monday and Thursday. And it's all right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Go like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'm Luke Inman on X at Luke_Spinman. We'll see you in a week, First Michigan. But until then, signing out.